Hey, third graders, it's me, Mrs. Fessler, and I'm back with another exciting Patricia Polacco book. I'm so excited to read The Bee Tree to you. Take a look at the cover. Do you notice anything like the other books that you've seen from her? You know, she always writes books that are based on her real life, things that she experienced or her family did. Another cool thing that she does is dedicate those books. On this page, she dedicated this book for Mary Ellen, my mother, who went on to become a teacher for 37 years, and for her childhood friends, Ali Enar and Mary Agnes Tundenvold, with such love. So pay attention to that as we read through this story today. All right, here we go. I'm tired of reading, Grandpa, Mary Ellen sighed. I'd rather be outdoors running and playing. So you don't feel like reading, eh? Feel like running, do you? Then I expect this is just the right time to find a bee tree, he said, taking down a jar and putting on his lucky hat. What's a bee tree? Well, it's where the bees make their home. It's where they keep the honey, the sweetest in the land. Grandpa chirped excitedly. But we already have honey, Grandpa, Mary Ellen said. Ah, but not honey like this, her grandpa answered with a wink. Right away, this book tells us the main character's problem. What is it? Yeah, Mary Ellen does not want to read. I bet there are days where you feel like you don't want to read anymore. So Grandpa has a suggestion. They're going to go find a bee tree. Have you ever done that? Can't wait to see what happens. Mary Ellen and her grandpa put on their coats and went outdoors. They walked down past the hollyhocks to the garden and found bees gathering pollen from the flowers. Her grandpa carefully trapped some in the glass jar, making sure not to hurt them. When he was sure that he had enough, he smiled and leaned close to Mary Ellen. They'll take the pollen back to their hive to make it into honey. We'll be right behind them. Then he slowly loosened the lid of the jar and let one single bee escape. It stayed in the mouth of the jar for a moment, flew straight up, and buzzed toward the cornfield. Quick now, run! Grandpa called out as he began to chase the bee. Grandpa let one bee out of the jar. I wonder why he did that. What do you think? Let's see what happens next. Just then, Mrs. Gavlock from down the creek way was walking baby Sylvester in his carriage. Mary Ellen and her grandpa ran by them. We're off to find a bee tree today, Grandpa shouted. I haven't done that since I was a girl, Mrs. Gavlock said excitedly. May I come too? Grandpa motioned for her to follow, and the three of them were off and running. Baby Sylvester laughed out loud as his carriage bumped and bounced through the rows of corn. Honk went a goose as it waddled by them. As they came from the cornfield and crossed Dee's Junction, Enar Tundenvold came around the bend on his squeaky old bike. Where are you all going in such a hurry? He asked. A bee tree, Mary Ellen puffed as the foursome scurried by. Chasing a bee to its tree? This I would like to do also, he said as he stood up and pedaled faster. The wheels of his bike went tweedle-deek-squeak. Their boots slapped the ground. The buggy pitched and swayed. The goose honked as they ran after that bee. The bee swooped down, stopped, held in midair. then circled back past them and headed straight for the St. Joe River. What are some of the names we've heard so far? Dietz's Junction, Enar Tundenvold. I've never heard names like those before. They're kind of funny. I wonder where they are from. Also, the noises that they make. The wheels of the bike, tweedledee, tweedled, squeak. There's a lot of interesting things. Say that together. Tweedle, tweedle, squeak. Olav Ludenhagen, while strolling on the nearby shore with the charming Herman sisters, Petra and Dorma, looked up and noticed the commotion coming toward them. "Where are you all going?" he called out. "To a bee tree we are going," Enar Tundenvold puffed as he pedaled by. "Can we come too?" the two lovely ladies pleaded. "Fast you'll have to run," Enar said. "We don't care, let's go," the three shouted as they raced after him. Slap, bump, honk, tweedled, tweedled, squeak, frump. They all went as they sped down the road after that bee. Look at these illustrations. When do you think this story takes place? Notice how they're dressed, the way they look, the stroller or the buggy as they used to call it. Is this set in the past, present, or future? I think past. And I know because of the way that the things look, we don't have buggies like this anymore. We have baby strollers. So that's a way that we can tell the time and the place of the story setting. So it happened in the past or a long time ago. Klondike Bertha Fitchworth, just back from an expedition in the Yukon, had car trouble next to the road. She looked up just in time to see everybody running by. "You say you're after a bee tree," she shrieked. "Zounds, that would be easy, but eureka! What an adventure!" She sprinted along behind them. The bee dipped and soared as it made its way out of sight. The grandpa carefully let out another, and the chase was on again. The noisy, merry bunch galloped up over Bird Talk Fellow Ridge, only to run smack dab into Fiduciary Long Drop's herd of goats. The goats bleated and bucked as the people clamored through them. "What ho!" Fiduciary called out. "You're going to scare me goats." "A bee tree," a voice called back. With that, Fiduciary tooted his flute, and he and his flock joined the trace. "Bounding Billies, this will be great," he said, on a dead run. Now we know why Grandpa needed more bees. He only let out one before, in case they got lost and needed another. Three traveling musicians looked up in time to see a thundering stampede of goats, buggies, people, and bikes coming straight for them. "Why are they all running, Pa?" one of the boys asked his father. "We're after that bee," Grandpa said, pointing at the small dot in the sky. "It's leading us to a bee tree," Mary Ellen wailed as she streaked by them. "Come on along, Klondike," Bertha chortled after as she huffed past. Slap, bump, bleat, honk, Tweedle, tweedle, squeak, thump. They went as they ran. Hoofs clattered, rows of corn were parted. Nothing really mattered but chasing that bee. They ran through Griner's Bluff and into Bishop's Meadow, around Dead Man's Tree, and then to Bird Talk Hollow. Slap, bump, bleat, honk, tweedle, tweedle, squeak, thump. What is that? Oh, it's the noises the group is making as they chase that bee. Sure getting longer and longer and noisier. More and more people. They're all after the bee tree. I wonder if they'll find it. As they ran down the hollow, the bee took blinding speed and disappeared from their sight. They all stopped to catch their breath just in front of Dunk's woods. Grandpa handed the jar with the last bee in it to Mary Ellen, and she let it out. Sure enough, it flew straight and low right into Dunk's woods. It's the bee tree, Grandpa whispered. That's where the honey will be. But we need plenty of smoke. Now that they know where the bee tree is, why would they need smoke? What do you think? They can't start the tree on fire. I wonder if the smoke will chase the bees away. Everyone set about to build a smoke fire from twigs and damp leaves. When the smoke had quieted the bees, Grandpa balanced on Enar's bicycle and reached into the tree. As I pulled out a small piece of honeycomb, he dipped them into some of baby Sylvester's spare clean diapers that Klondike Bertha was holding. Mary Ellen tied them into neat little bundles. Mr. Londonhagen put them into the baby's carriage. The musicians played merrily as the Herman sisters danced. Look at all of those honeycombs. Grandpa invited everyone back to the house for baking powder biscuits, fresh brewed tea, and of course, honey. There was music, dancing, tall tales, and raucous laughter as they all buzzed about the sweet adventure of the day. Look at how happy everyone is eating. Grandpa took Mary Ellen aside from the crowd. Now, child, I am going to show you what my father showed me, and his father before him, he said quietly. He spooned the honey onto the cover of one of the books. Taste, he said, almost in a whisper. Mary Ellen savored the honey on her book. There is such sweetness inside of this book, too, he said thoughtfully. Such things, adventure, knowledge, and wisdom. But those things do not come easily. You have to pursue them, just like we ran after the bees to find their tree. So you must also chase these things through the pages of a book. Then he smiled and hugged her. Look at the illustration. What does it tell you about Mary Ellen and Grandpa and how they feel about each other? Do you notice their smiles? They're working together. Grandpa's teaching her a lesson. They must really care about each other. Plus, they just had a great adventure. From that day on, Mary Ellen never again complained about her reading. She found it to be every bit as exciting as a wild chase through the Michigan countryside, and as sweet as the honey from the bee. What a great lesson we can learn about digging in and not giving up, no matter how hard it is. I hope you enjoy the book. Keep working hard, third graders.